Hey there, Morbid Maniacs! It's time for another spooky video, a part of Vlogtober. And for tonight's spooky video, I'm going to be telling another story from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, I remember that one of my subscribers had actually requested me to tell a story or two from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but I can't find the comment for the life of me, and I can't remember exactly which stories it was. So if that was you and you remember which stories you wanted me to tell, then please feel free to leave a comment and I will make it in one of November or December's videos. But the story that we're going to be talking about tonight is called The Dead Hand. And before I get into this video, I just wanted to say that if you're new here, hello, my name is Melanie. And over here we are Halloween 24/7, spooky, paranormal content all the time. But especially for the month of October, we will post nothing but nothing but spooky and paranormal content for 31 days straight. So if that is something that you're interested in, please feel free to stick around, subscribe, and become a part of this little Morbid Maniac family. There was a small village in Ireland that lay on the edge of a large bog. The marshy land stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with small, bushy weeds and the skeletons of tall, ragged trees with branches that reached out like long, twisted arms. The soggy ground could be dangerous because it was riddled with many deep bog holes that were filled with black, murky water. The bog holes were often hidden behind clumps of foliage, and it was important to watch your step. If a man accidentally fell down a bog hole, he would never come up again. It was a fearsome place, if all the tales told about it are true. It was before my time, but I have heard many a strange story about the bog, and it would make your skin creep just to listen to them. Every day, the men in the village went out onto the bog and toiled for hours, cutting the turf. They loaded it up into their wheelbarrows and hauled it home to dry it in the sun. They used the turf for fuel, burning it in the fireplace to heat their homes. They were also able to sell it to make money. But after the sun had set, nobody would dare venture out in the darkness onto that desolate bog. In the moonlight, the wind would whistle through the dead branches of the twisted trees. Those who lived nearby would often glimpse strange shapes creeping across the deserted stretch of swamp. There were rumors throughout the village that strange creatures emerged from the bog holes at night. People were so afraid that they refused to leave their homes after dark. There was only one person in the village who did not believe in these creatures. A tall young man by the name of Tom McManus. Everybody knew him as Long Tom. On his way home from work, as the light began to fade, he'd often whisper to his friends, "There's one," and they would jump and run. Tom would laugh and laugh. Finally, some of his friends turned on him. "If you know so much," they said, "why don't you go onto the bog some night and see what happens to you?" "I'll do it," said Long Tom. "Sure. Don't I work out there every day? Not once have I ever seen anything to frighten me. Why would it be different at night? Tomorrow night, I'll take my lantern and walk out to the hanging willow tree in the middle of the hole. If I get scared and run, I'll never make fun of you again." The next night, the men went to Long Tom McManus's house to see him on his way. It was the blackest of nights, and thick clouds obscured the moon, blocking out the light. When they arrived, Tom's mother was pleading with him not to go. "I'll be alright," he said. "There's nothing to be afraid of. Don't be foolish like the rest." He took his lantern and, singing to himself, headed down the path that led to the bog. Some of the young men wondered if Tom was right. Maybe they were afraid of things that did not exist. A few decided to follow him and see for themselves, but they stayed far behind in case he ran into trouble. They were sure they saw dark shapes moving about, but Tom's lantern kept bobbing up and down, and Tom's voice kept floating back to them, and nothing happened. Finally, they caught sight of the willow tree. There was Tom, standing in a circle of light, looking this way and that, whistling a happy tune. All of a sudden, the wind blew out of his lantern, and Tom suddenly stopped whistling. The men stood silent and still in the blackness, straining their eyes to see and waiting for something awful to happen. When the clouds shifted and the moon peeked out again, they caught a glimpse of Long Tom. His back was up against the willow tree, and his arms were out in front of him, as if he was fighting off something. It seemed like the very darkness was alive with slimy, creepy things. Strange shapes were swirling about him. They could hear loud wails and awful moaning sounds. Then, the clouds covered the moon again, and once more, it was black as pitch. By now, the men were on their knees, praying for dear life, calling upon the Virgin Mary and all the saints to protect them. When the moon came out again, Tom's face was as pale as death. He was desperately hanging on to the willow tree with one arm. His other arm was stretched out in front of him, and something was pulling on it. It looked like a disembodied hand, with rotting flesh dropping off the moldy bones, and it had a tight grasp on poor Tom's arm. Stronger and stronger it pulled, until at last Tom lost his grip on the tree and was dragged off into the night, shrieking like a soul in hell. That's what the men said they witnessed before Tom was swallowed up by the darkness. When the clouds blotted out the moon once more, the men turned and ran through the blackness towards the village. Again and again, they lost the path and fell into the muck, struggling to avoid the deadly bog holes. In the end, they crawled back on their hands and knees, but Tom McManus was not with them. In the morning, the people searched everywhere for Tom. Finally, they gave him up for lost. That evening, the villagers heard a cry. It was Tom's mother. She was rushing down the path from the bog, shouting and waving. When the villagers spotted her, she frantically gestured to them to follow her. Struggling to overcome their fears, the villagers ran after her, and when she came to a stop, they found young Tom McManus, slumped against the willow tree, shaking and gibbering as if he had lost his mind. His left hand was raised in the air, pointing, and his wild eyes were staring at something that only he could see. Where his right hand should have been, there was nothing more than a bloody stump. It had been ripped clean off. Nobody ever knew for sure what it was that he had seen. Some people claimed that he had been attacked by the dead hand, and others said that this was just talk of drunken, superstitious fools. The only person who really knew what happened that night was young Tom McManus. But he never spoke another word again. He spent the rest of his short life barricaded in his bedroom, shaking and trembling through the long nights. He didn't make it to the end of the year, and when they lowered him into his grave, his grieving mother cried out to the people gathered in the churchyard and begged them never to be so foolhardy as to venture out onto the cursed bog in the middle of the night. So there was the story of the dead hand. What do you guys think of this spooky tale? I absolutely love these scary stories to tell in the dark. I feel like they're kind of where I started on my channel, and I feel like for as long as I am making YouTube videos, I will always tell scary stories to tell in the dark because that's where my love for horror first started. But yeah, if you are that subscriber that mentioned the 2 stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark that you wanted me to read, I am so sorry I lost your comment, but feel free to leave that comment again and I will make it in a future video for you. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big old thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already. Become a morbid maniac. Also be sure to hit that bell notification, that way you get notified every single time I upload a new video. And I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next one.